There's one thing in these Gypsy Rose emails that I'm not seeing anyone talk about, and that's the pattern of control that she seems to always need to be in. It's like every situation she feels like she needs to be the one giving advice. She needs to be the one directing everything. And I was curious, like, for someone who has been supposedly under a tremendous amount of coercive control for her entire life, this seems abnormal. So I asked ChatGPT to help me understand this in a psychological sense. I don't think it's normal for someone who says that they've been controlled their entire life to have this much assertiveness, dominance, and control over every conversation that she has. Because someone who has been under long-term coercive control often swings the other way at first, either extremely passive or extremely boundary obsessed and hyper independent as a trauma reaction. But there's a difference between trying to assert healthy control over your life versus trying to control other people's every move. And in the emails, it sounds like that she's trying to control people's moves. What's striking about the emails from what I've read is that her control seems to extend outward, micromanaging partners, setting weird rules, making demands, not just building her own autonomy. And that's not typical of someone simply trying to reclaim personal agency. It's more typical of someone who learned manipulation as a survival tool and now uses it because it works. The uncomfortable truth is that sometimes people who've been controlled learn to survive by controlling others. It's a twisted mindset like eat or be eaten. They might have internalized the belief that whoever controls the narrative or the relationship holds the power. And it's also a little concerning that she was in a relationship with somebody the entire time that she was in prison. She was jumping from one man to the next, sending actually explicit emails to each and every one, telling each and every one how much she loved them, how much she wanted to marry each and every one of them. That is a very unhealthy pattern of codependency. But one thing that really stuck out to me was the fact that she would go into great detail about the things that she had planned, which leads me to believe that she is very decisive in her decision making. And for someone who has suffered extreme abuse and PTSD, it was extremely hard for me to assert dominance and learn how to make decisions for myself because I was kind of always following what everyone else was doing rather than deciding what it was that I wanted for myself. But one of the things that she mentioned in the emails was about Christmas and how she wanted white lights the very first Christmas, and then after that they could come up with a color scheme, and she liked gold and silver. But someone who's truly been crushed by lifelong control to the point of severe CPTSD, like I just said that I had been, often has deep fears of rejection. They usually tiptoe, apologize excessively, or withdraw when someone says no. But Gypsy doesn't seem to fold. There was one instance where Brian stopped emailing her, and this girl emailed constantly for years trying to get him to respond again. That is not a normal situation. She does not like when people reject her in a way where she doesn't feel like she's in control of that situation. She was pushing harder, and that's not typical of someone who's trying to recover autonomy. It's more aligned with someone who feels entitled to connection or who sees people as props to fulfill her needs. And you can even tell in the emails that she was writing to everyone that everyone is a prop. Everyone is there to fulfill Gypsy's needs. This is not typical of someone who has suffered lifelong trauma. With the Christmas decor detail example, a person freshly out of extreme control might be cautious, indecisive, or even overwhelmed by having to make too many choices. Meanwhile, Gypsy is planning exactly how she wants her Christmas to look, being very specific about aesthetics, clearly assuming she'll get to shape everything to her taste. It shows comfort with self-assertion, or to put it bluntly, it's someone whose preferences dominate the scenes. It doesn't sound like a traumatized person still terrified of making wrong choices. It sounds like someone who expects her opinions to set the agenda. And this is very telling in how Dee Dee and Gypsy's relationship was before Dee Dee passed. I am almost certain the way that Gypsy pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed Brian is the same way that she would push and push and push her mom until she finally give in and give Gypsy whatever it was that Gypsy wanted. Could this be a trauma response? Sure, but I don't think that it is. Some people's life are so chaotic and controlled by someone else that they hyper focus on controlling their environment, but it usually comes with disclaimers like, I hope this is okay, or I don't want to be too much, or a fear of upsetting others. Gypsy is incredibly dominant in every situation, very assertive, very controlling, very into getting what she wants at whatever cost necessary. And this is entitlement or even manipulative dominance. Her behaviors do not line up with someone freshly stepping into freedom or trying to figure out who they are. They line up with someone who's always centered their own desires or who learned that pushing until you get what you want is how to navigate the world. And the fact that she's persistent when men reject her, that's a big neon sign that she's not driven by fear. She's driven by the need to win. Let me know what you think. I had not seen anybody talking about how controlling and manipulative the emails actually were. So I wanted to jump into that conversation to see if anybody else picked up on how controlling she was in every single scenario. She was very controlling. The only time that I didn't really hear her controlling the narrative was when she was talking to Melissa Moore, and Melissa Moore was kind of directing Gypsy on how to persuade public opinion through changing certain things about her story. I've also been in touch with one of Gypsy's prison roommates, and she hasn't told me if it's okay for me to share those emails yet, but those emails that her and I have been corresponding back and forth with are also very insightful because she lived with Gypsy for quite a while. I don't want to say how long because I don't want Gypsy to know who it is. And she was also very questionable as to Gypsy's patterns of behaviors and wondered how nobody picked up on it. But let me know what you think. To me, this does not sound like a meek girl who's been controlled all her life. It sounds like somebody who knows that if you push hard enough, you get what you want through manipulation and control. Make sure you hit that follow button. Don't forget to like, comment, save, and share the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.